Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Roundtable Battlefield. Colin and Kevin, once again, to have an argument.
Yes. And you can't see them, but there are knives scattered on the floor and under the table. Just in case it gets a little ugly in here, we want to be prepared.
I have a samurai sword.
Samurai sword. Really? I have that sword they had on Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember the name of it, but it looked cool. Well, what brings us to the round table today?
Well,
There's nothing really going on in the world. I thought this was a mix-up, but here we are.
here we are. Well, we've crossed a couple of milestones, in fact, in just the last couple days, one of which, the Ukraine war, has been going on for 3 calendar years now. But
Only 3 years.
Only 3 years, but we've already crossed 1 month of the Trump administration in the United States of America.
1 month checkup.
1 month checkup.
Well, that's a nice. I like that. We should do checkups on Trump so that everybody knows what's going on.
And I think probably compared to most past presidents, this is probably the most volatile 1 month checkup any president has ever had.
Yeah, my news feed's been pretty full.
Yeah, there's kind of no shortage of it. Every single day, there's at least a new headline.
Yeah.
And you can tie back
Well,
to
10 new headlines.
10 new headlines.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last time, was that every day is a week's worth of news.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's crazy out
much.
there. All right, well, what should we talk about first? Boy, I know it's hard to pick. Where do you start?
Where do you approach from?
Oh, God, Lord. Well, let's at least choose our sides. I mean, Trump is a very divisive individual. We have lots of subjects to talk about. Do we want to go individually for and against, or do we want to just pick for and against now?
I say we go case by case basis.
Okay. Well, what do we got up first then?
Well, it's like, well, what angle do you want to approach this from? We have some notes of some major key topics that have kind of been making the rounds on the news over the past few weeks, and gosh, I don't even know where to start, because some of these topics we have talked about in their own dedicated episodes.
Well, we can combine two of these slightly. Now, steel and aluminum is an interesting subject because apparently, if what I read is true, Trump has brokered a deal with Ukraine to have Ukraine supply the United States with all of the steel, aluminum, and rare earth minerals, pretty much replacing Canada's what used to supply all of those things. Now America's going to the Ukraine, working out a deal with them, and leaving us holding the bag.
Yeah, and I think that is a horrible idea for Ukraine, because I don't know why Ukraine, because I think there's a ton of pushback that people, like a lot of people on the pro-Ukrainian side, do not want Ukraine to sign this, because
that's an interesting thing to say.
Because Donald Trump
sounds like a major economic development for a struggling, rebuilding country. So
I don't like the idea of it, because it kind of seems like Donald Trump really, if you want to simplify it in one sentence to how I see it as Donald Trump is saying, okay, why don't you, I'll be Trump, you be Ukraine. So how about you give me all of your minerals, give me all your steel, all of your aluminum, and in return, I'll tell Europe that they have to defend you. They're responsible for you. I'm not responsible for everything, even though you're giving me quite a lot.
Well, there's a few assumptions in there, you have to admit. Like, we don't know what the terms of this arrangement are. Like, you're right. Ukraine might be getting ripped off.
I think they're getting shafted.
It may be true, and you know, there's no way for me to know either way. So I have to give you that as an unknown. Ukraine might not be the best negotiator when it comes to setting something up with Trump and steel and aluminum. However, I'm going to try and hopefully think that Ukraine has some advocates on its behalf, whether that be a European nation or just, he must have a short list number who he calls for advice. So I'm hoping that he gets some good advice and makes some good decisions and comes up with a deal. Trump does like to make deals. Now, we don't know if it's a good or bad one for Ukraine, but hopefully Ukraine can strike a deal with the U.S. and make some decent money off of steel, aluminum. Here's what I like about this deal. Steel, aluminum, and rare earth minerals are things that the entire world is in need of. So this positions Ukraine as a world supplier. That makes them a world presence on the big stage, right? So I see this as raising the status, the opinion, the world opinion on the world stage of Ukraine. Now, whether they set up a bad deal or not, that remains to be seen. But I'm going to treat this as a positive for Ukraine because it gives them a realistic way to supply their own needs, i.e., if the United States is buying all of these commodities off of them, there's a regular shipping, there's going to be regular traffic, port calls, there's going to be all of this economic activity that will have spin-off benefits for Ukraine. And so I'm thinking, so far, until somebody tells me that Ukraine is getting ripped off, I'm going to have to lean on the side of this is a definite positive move.
I don't know. When it comes to the whole thing, because sure, you could look at this as money is going to Ukraine to help them rebuild, what have you. But the war is still going on. So
this is a tiny little detail.
So it's a little detail there that kind of throws a wrench into it. How can you rebuild if you are still being shelled on all parts of the country? And
well, don't forget this agreement may have just been inked. Like it may just have not be nothing more than a signature for now. They still have to set up all of the equipment. They have to dig the mines. I don't know where they are. Ukraine is in their mining program. This must be part of the deal to set up Ukraine as a supplier of rare earth and steel and aluminum, and who else knows what type of minerals that Ukraine may find when they're making all of these other mines.
Well, interestingly enough, according to UPI, Russia offers own rare minerals deal to U.S., including deposits in occupied Ukrainian territory. How interesting.
Well, Russia does have a lot of rare earths. Well, they have everything. Everything you need, Russia's got it. So it's no surprise that they're trying to sneak in on this deal.
Actually, so it does say, so apparently Ukrainian President Zelensky has indicated a willingness to sign onto the deal, but is holding out for security guarantees from the United States to protect the country from Russia in the future. And that's going to be the giant bugaboo, because I don't think if that's not guaranteed by the States, Ukraine's going to say no. And I think that they should say no, because again, maybe we talked about this in the Russia and Ukraine video. History has shown that you can't trust Russia and rely on their word, and that they need a protection because they're next to such a hostile neighbor that's kind of dragged them through the mud several times in just in the last 100 years.
Yeah, now I you got me thinking. What would if we take it to the end? What would an American promise of non-aggression look like?
Deploying a bunch of peacekeepers, the whole thing of giving the funding to Ukraine, because again, when I think there's that kind of misconception of people saying, well, they're giving lots of money to Ukraine. I believe what's happening is they give the money to Ukraine for Ukraine to then thusly buy munitions and weapons back from the States. So supplying the local American economy and keeping their weapon businesses in business.
Yeah.
So
war is big money.
War is big money.
Money in war.
It pays.
Yeah, pays good.
So I imagine that could be it. Or again, I would hope that really. I think the best case scenario for Ukraine, if there's some sort of peace deal where they unfortunately have to give up a lot of their territory that they've lost in the war, I think there could be an acceptance of it by Ukraine and its citizens if they were to be guaranteed ascension into NATO. Because then at that point, Russia can't attack again, or else that Article 5 will mean that they're blown off the map. So,
well, the converse of that is as soon as you sign the NATO deal, Russia has to attack, as they've promised for generations to do. So you're almost forcing Putin's hand.
But yet all the Baltic states and Finland have joined NATO, and they directly border Russia, and Russia has done nothing.
Right, but there is a certain danger inherent with just one more. What does he do? Okay, he doesn't do anything. All right, just one more. What does he do? Okay, he doesn't do anything. Well, just one more.
But I think that you can show that Putin is just a lying walking farce, because
that isn't up for debate.
He kept threatening. Well, yeah, because he kept threatening nuclear action against the West to try and spook them. Because first it was the F-16s, then it was the Leopard tanks, then it was Finland in NATO, then it was this, and that, and every single time they've done nothing.
Who did nothing? America?
Russia did nothing.
Oh, Russia. Well, they did test their hypersonic ballistic missile.
Again, it's just a spook tactic to get the West to back off.
Well, it worked. Did you see it? It's scary shit. Like, I would not want to be anywhere near that thing. Oh my goodness. It looked like a rain of death, the video that I saw.
I think it's all a scare tactic. I don't think he will, like, Putin will never ever press the nuclear button. He just does that to scare people away. Because the big red button is just very scary.
You're saying that there's no corner that Putin could be backed into where he would say, to heck with it all, press the big button.
Well, it would mean the instant guaranteed destruction of him, his family, and his whole country.
No, exactly. But if that's what I mean.
No, but
is there a corner that Putin could be backed into?
No, because I think his dream is to reclaim the former Soviet Union, and he won't die or he doesn't want to die until that's a reality, and he won't have that reality if he just blasts himself into history, if he wants to start pressing all the red buttons.
Well, once you take away the possibility of that history, and the only other thing left to do is hit the big red button, how do you know what he decides to do? Saddam Hussein, when at the end of the Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein finally realized that his big dream of, owning a port, having access to a port, and take over Qatar or Kuwait, sorry. It wasn't until he was convinced that he had no hope, that he had definitely lost the war, that he lit all those oil wells on fire. And he didn't have a red button, but if he did, I bet you he would have used it, because he lit over 100 wells on fire. It took years to put them all out. And that was his, okay, I'm in a corner. What do I have that I can still have some effect on anything? And they said, well, you can light all the oil rigs on fire and that'll show them. And well, like a moron, that's exactly what he did, because it's high school politics again. Mm-hmm. It's temper. We're full in temper tantrums. That's how low we are when we get into wars, right? It's emotional. It's charged.
There are no rules,
and there are no rules, right? Rules of war.
You can try and set up the Geneva Convention. Yeah. You can try and set up. There are no rules in war.
As soon as war is declared, all of that gets thrown in the garbage,
and the worst of humanity comes out.
Well, exactly, and that's why we try very hard over thousands of years to rid ourselves of our warlike ways. But, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So we have to deal with it and come up with practical solutions. And, I'm using this steel and aluminum trade. Back in the day, monarchies used to trade family members. You marry my cousin, I'll marry your cousin. We'll all get along. This isn't that. But it's something. It is definitely something. And if there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I think that a lot of people will use this as a conduit to go, okay, maybe we can meet on some sort of common ground, come up with a demilitarized zone, come up with a border that makes sense for everybody, come up with a plan of how we're going to get along as two very friendly nations. And I'm still struggling to see what broke them up. Russia and Ukraine have such a long history, and there's conflict, but there's conflict in every country, right? Like you can't give me a country that's been isolated completely from conflict.
Iceland. No, I'm just kidding.
No, Iceland.
Their biggest enemy is the volcanoes.
Yeah, we'll talk about Iceland. That's actually, there's some funny stories about Iceland, especially with Trump. But I still think that this is the first, it's baby steps. It's Bill Murray baby steps to peace. And I might be completely wrong. What the heck do I know, right? But that's how I'm looking at this news item, is like, oh, right, finally, maybe there's a chink in the armor. We set up some sort of trade agreement with Ukraine. Ukraine feels a little bit stronger, a little bit more independent, a little bit, their world stage, their image is going to go up a little bit. And maybe that will be okay, well, maybe we will sign a deal then and figure this Russia thing out. That's all I can really read into it from the headline, right? It's just maybe it could be something.
Yeah. And reality, we're not any professionals. We are no professionals whatsoever. We're just two guys having we're just two schmucks reading headlines and trying to come up with some sort of consensus. But
yeah, well, other people will see these headlines and think whatever they think about them, and an alternate point of view usually never hurts. So, and we're just on a different point of view is all we are. I think we could talk about the tariffs on Canada, of course. Those are set to start on, March 4th? I forget. It's pretty soon.
Right.
So by the time you watch this, maybe the tariffs are already in place. In order for me to debate tariffs, I almost have to kind of come clean because I'm not anti-tariffs, which is going to sound controversial. But where I differ in my tariff mindset is that I believe in low tariffs, like 2 to 5% tariffs, almost like a tax, right? Like a sales tax. Only it's a reverse sales tax. You want to sell things in Canada, just pay the sales tax, and then we don't have to worry about taxing our citizens. That's one way it could work. And in the past, the Canadian government has had tariffs because there's most favored nations lists and the things and things like that, and that what list you're on determines what tariff you pay. But anyways, Canada's never had it, even for our countries we don't like. We've never had a 25% tariff. So I could agree with you that a 25% tariff is bad, but I would have to come clean and announce that, I think a small tariff is good. And I think it's good because, let's say you can you know how to make widgets. You're a country and you make the best widgets in town. And we can't make widgets. Well, then we need your widgets. That 2% tariff is to finance our innovation department, universities and the like, to say, I need you to come up with a way that we can make widgets here without having to buy your widgets. But now we have to fund that research. We have to fund that development. Well, that's why we use the tariff. That's the money that goes to the university that has to come up with a way, find a way to patent an even better widget than the one you've already patented and are not letting us make. So I'm pro tariffs. I'm not pro 25%. Tariffs by any means.
Yeah, that's where my problem with tariffs comes in, because at the end of the day, it just makes things more expensive for you and me. And who wants that? It's a pretty lazy argument to kind of sit back on, but it
makes it harder to import things. So as much as I'm against a 25% tariff, we're going to get really good at building our own stuff pretty soon because of these tariffs.
I hope so.
Yeah, which is going to have a positive spin. We're going to build up our economy because we can't rely on our neighbor sending us cheap stuff anymore.
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe just in the past few weeks, there has been a good argument to make that, I'm thinking while I'm speaking, so I'm trying to think carefully here. It's like,
I can't do it. I don't know how you're doing it.
Well, you can't pause for too long, or else people are going to think you're stupid.
Totally. I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Basically, just less reliance on the U.S. overall
is a great thing.
And you know what? I don't disagree with it. Yes, it's nice to be able to have a big, long, peaceful border and have a strong trading partner where we do a lot of trading between us. But there has to be, I think, come to a point where we have to kind of have like a safety valve where we only trade so much with said country in case countries go off the deep end a little bit with their leaders. And so, our entire economy or trading exports don't just get all of a sudden capsized by like one person being elected. So I can see that and support that.
Well, there's so many glaring holes in our economy. Number one, we don't build any cars. Like we make cars for other companies, but there's no Canadian car company. Can you think of one?
No. We should make maple cars. Yeah, like you have your Toyota, Honda, Maple.
I like it. It's not bad. The other thing we don't really build a lot of here is passenger jets, that the bigger ones. We build the little ones, the regional ones with Bombardier. We don't have a major airline manufacturing. And with the size of our country, if anyone needs planes, it's us. Like, good Lord.
We have a lot
of ground to cover.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of rural communities that rely on air transport.
Yeah.
So.
And you know what I really like about Bombardier is they've positioned themselves as the world. They're known for water bombers. That's what they do. And I would love to see Bombardier put a water bomber at every single airport in Canada.
Considering we like to have a lot of forest fires, especially around here.
Exactly.
BC in particular.
Exactly. I would love to see a water bomber at every airport, because you actually save money doing it, because you get to the fire right away. Before it becomes something that's $1 million fire, you get it while it's $1,000 fire.
Or at the very least, you can just aid firefighters, and the firefighting effort just takes less stress off their back.
And if I'm ranting, which I kind of felt I was, I also think that water bombers should be flown by the Air Force.
Really?
Yeah, I think the Air Force should absorb water bombing, water bombers. Because the water bombers are practicing very challenging flying conditions, smoke, fire, hills, valleys. Some of these water bombers, they're doing 20, 30 circuits a day. So they'll drop 20 or 30 loads on it's 20 landings. You're landing on the water. So it's a great way to build up flight time for our pilots and get them involved in community.
Kind of keeps the Air Force busy.
Keeps the Air Force busy, and it keeps the Air Force image alive. In the Coast Guard, when you rescue someone off a ship, right? One of the neat things that they told me was after they're done a rescue, bear in mind, this was 30 years ago, after they complete a rescue, they go to the bar and they drink free for the night. Because they're the heroes. They're the local heroes. They brought back. Hey, they brought Joe back. Good job.
So what you're saying is you're advocating for the Air Force to get free drinks at the bar.
Exactly. See? Always an angle.
So always a silver lining to it.
Well, I think the Air Force would like that.
I mean,
Coast Guard treatment.
Who wouldn't want that?
No kidding.
Look at the prices.
Yeah, and the planes look cool, and maybe you take the kids up on Saturdays. I don't know. Come up with something.
Daddy made me breathe in a bunch of smoke.
And we could do water bomber runs at Gimli. Give everybody a spray on the beach. Like there's
that actually would be pretty cool. Like drop a bunch of water. Like the kids would love that.
Totally.
Like kids go nuts when you just open like the fire hydrants and the firefighters spray them with the hose.
I say if you're going to spend money, spend it entertaining the kids.
Because that will generate money out the wazoo.
Well, it has such future implications, right? That's an Air Force plane that just came and cooled us off on a hot summer. Like, come on, there's just so many headlines.
Yeah, I can see how that, like little instances like that, there could be some nice benefits to it, some nice silver linings to it. But
so Canadian industry, we have a rocket port in Churchill, not doing anything with that. The railroad up there is decrepit. Why
Isn't it like broken in some place, or was breaking?
They have to send a repair crew every spring.
And of course, that's a bit of a lifeline for that community.
Lifeline.
Because there's no major roads that go there.
Well, for tourism alone, going up to see the polar bears, there should be a full train every day up there. It's such a cool experience that many Manitobans don't even know about.
I haven't been there.
Yeah, and neither have I.
I've only been as far north. This is true. I've been as far north as Dauphin.
No way.
Yeah.
In an EV9?
Yeah. The episode that we did last year. Yeah. Well, actually, it depends. Grand Beach, is that farther north than Dauphin, or is Dauphin farther north?
I'd put it to Dauphin. I think I would.
Okay,
put it to Dauphin.
So those two places are as far north as I've been, but I haven't been anywhere beyond that. I would love to go on the railroad.
We'll have to look it up after we're done filming.
We'll have to do some research.
See if we got
We're kind of straying from the original topic, but I think the thing with the water bomber, I think is a good example of a good thing that we could do. But that auto industry one, okay, I'll be honest, I have no idea how the auto industry works and how a lot of that works. But to me, it sounds like to start making Canadian cars and just whip up your own auto industry, that kind of sounds a little daunting.
Well, do you know anyone else that's whipped up a car company in the recent few years?
Let me think here. There's my buddy Jim. No, no, I don't.
I'm just saying, it is possible to do. People have done it. Why we can't do it here, I'm assuming there's probably a very good reason that I just don't know. However, I don't even see anybody trying. Like, there isn't even an unreasonable, a car I would never buy that's made in Canada.
It'd be cool. It would be cool if we could make our own cars. Because when you think of the major, the countries where the most major everyday cars come from, you have the U.S., Germany, South Korea / Japan. It's really just those 4 countries. Sure, you have maybe like France. Well, I guess you have Italy as well.
Well, you have Ladas too.
Yeah, but I guess maybe just everyday civilian cars. Those 4 countries are the vast majority of it. It would be cool if Canada, because I think more cars in the market, the more competition, the more innovation, the better.
And actually, when Lada popped into my head, Ladas were laughed at when they were first built because they were basically junk. Like they got you to work, but that's it. It wasn't a comfortable ride. It was nothing. But the car also cost nothing. Like anybody could afford the thing. So it made them so popular that no matter where you go in Russia, you're going to see it's wall-to-wall Ladas. So why can't Canada build a budget junker piece? For a kid's first car, somebody should be building the bare bones minimum of what you need to get to wherever your job is.
I'm not laughing at your point. I think that would be good, but at the same time, I don't. Okay, I'll be hands in the air. I hate American cars. Yeah, because they're cheap. Yeah. But they're cheap. Yeah. And it would be a little disappointing to me if just North America was just known as the land of the cheap cars.
Well, I hate American cars because they're not built for Canada. No. You got to put a block heater in them. In the Canadian car, you come block heater standard, battery heater standard, water heater.
Anti-rust technology has been on cars for 40 years, and yet Chevys and Fords still get rust.
Exactly. Our cars would be built out of aluminum.
As an example, I'll give a random example. At my place, we have a BMW and a Honda in the garage, and they've, 2-car garage. The cars have been parked in the garages over several winters, snow hanging on them, not one lick of rust. Yeah, they are built to last, and those countries, their climates are almost nothing like ours, but yet they can last. And yet these North American cars,
Well, here we want to go down a rabbit hole. Is road salt for the roads or for the cars?
Yeah.
Because the car industry needs some turnover to sell new products. So, but that's just silly. Obviously, road salt saves lives, so that's why we use it. But
I would love if they managed to come out with some sort of nice hybrid of hybrid cars in themselves would be nice, but like some sort of dual hybrid where essentially you have the reliability of a Toyota or a Honda, but at the same time, they're still like decently affordable, like still have good value to them. If Canada came up with like a dual thing like that, that could put us on the map. And if countries wanted that car, because I think a car with that type of concept would sell. So I think that'd be cheap for us here at home, and then we can make a lot of money selling them abroad.
That's exactly where I was going to go with it. You raised the perfect point. Once you get good at making something for your own people, other people will want it, right? So, but how do you ever get good at building something if you're not at least manufacturing things?
To try.
Well, your domestic market is very important for that. It allows you to refine your product and your technique, your manufacturing techniques, so that you are competitive on a world stage. But we've tossed all of that out. We don't make fighter jets anymore after the Avro cancellation. We just sent them all to NASA. We've exported all of our innovation and our technology, and then we've sat back and went, what do you mean we don't get cheap stuff anymore?
And we don't export our natural gas. A lot of our raw resources we're not really exporting a lot of that anymore too. I mean, yes, there's climate concerns associated with it, but we're kind of content at just don't really export a whole lot. Like, kind of seems like all we got at this point is just timber and crude oil.
Oh, and coal. We send a
coal.
ton of coal.
Yeah, and
to
that's
China.
embarrassing. I don't believe
is
it.
Embarrassing.
We should not be sending something outdated.
We should put a 25% tariff on our coal.
Colin and Kevin for prime minister. No, but like I think
Grand Poobah, maybe.
well, but I think like I think this does raise a lot of points in just what we're importing and what are exporting. Maybe, okay, if now I want to put a heavy if.
We're getting right to it now.
If the 0.01% of credit I could ever give to Donald Trump and his administration,
I got to write this down,
for all these tariffs they would kind of kick Canada up the backside, and we became a lot more smart with what we import and what we export, and we became a domestic giant. Imagine the economic boom that we could have if we had our own auto industry, the water bombers, stopping the coal.
Yeah.
And again, like I think the natural gas is the cleanest thing that you have got aside from full clean.
Yeah, if you need a fossil fuel and you're concerned about the environment, then
natural gas is the way to go.
The way to go.
I think. Well, I mean, this really can tie
best of many bad solutions.
Exactly. And I mean, once we get to the season of the federal election, that will kind of time up because this starts to get into the realm of our own politics here. But we'll save that for a later episode. But yeah, essentially, to my original point, I will give 0.01% thumbs up credit to Donald Trump if these tariffs somehow managed to kick someone in the head in Canada, and we managed to become a domestic producer of our own things more so than what we are now.
Well, like the Super Bowl ad said, we make a lot of things in Canada.
I hate to stomp on your feet, but a lot of that was fact checked by some people online, and there's a lot of stuff that's like there's a lot of half truths or someone that are just downright not true.
Well, half truth is the right word because not everything gets invented by one person. Usually, it's a collaborative.
But then there's some of them on there that were basically invented.
Well, football was the one that got everybody.
I know. Yeah, everyone fell for that one.
Still don't know how they.
And again, basketball was invented by a Canadian, but he did it in America.
Well, that should still count. Come on.
And there's still and there's one, I think, a Canadian living abroad in England.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, or like someone from England who did it in Canada. So was it made by a Canadian or was it made by someone who was born in England
You're
and came
a
to Canada?
stickler for detail, eh?
It's not genuine. I think if you want to proudly claim that this was made in Canada, I think it should be made by someone who was born in Canada on Canadian soil.
Well, you raise a very good point, and it has to do with tariffs because a lot of grocery stores now are taking the extra effort to mark their products with Canadian, proudly made in Canada. And
there's been a lot
what they haven't done is acknowledge your controversy or your opinion that there are multi-levels of made in Canada. Is it just made in Canada but owned by another country?
And
is
there
it
are some
90% made in another country and just 10%
there are some labels that are so vague.
Oh, yeah.
So vague.
We need a standardized maple leaf. Let's say a black outline of a maple leaf means it was finished in Canada. Let's say a red maple leaf.
A true red one.
True red maple leaf. That means that everybody involved, start to finish, is Canadian and living here.
Yeah. There you go. Because I think Tim Hortons, for example, it's owned by a bunch of Americans.
I thought it was Brazil that owned Tim Hortons.
Well, not Canada who owns it.
Yeah, somebody, a non-Canadian.
Yeah, I know. But again, a lot of those labels, they're vague, or they can. I hate to call you out those like this, but some labels they get you where they might say, "Oh yeah, there's some of it that's done here, but then there's some stuff that's done over in Indiana."
Yeah,
Dad's root beer.
Well, I don't mind Dad's root beer. I'll buy it again. At least, you know what? The patent for Dad's root beer may not be Canadian, but it's bottled and in Canada.
Yeah. So that would be So Dad's root beer would be a black maple leaf example.
Yes, exactly. And I'm sure they use Canadian water. It costs a lot of money to ship water.
Sure.
So you would just use your local water supply, just like beer did.
A lot of fresh water.
Yeah, we got lots of fresh water. Just like Labatt's when they were in Winnipeg, they used Winnipeg water to make their beer.
That's probably not a good idea.
Well, the only
a bunch of sewage just got dumped in the Red River. So maybe it's best if we don't do that.
Well, do you remember Kokanee?
Yeah.
Well, Kokanee, when they first set up shop in out of BC, they trucked BC water because Kokanee is made in BC, and we're going to keep. Well, then they looked at their balance sheet and went, "Okay, we need a new plan quick. This is costing a fortune. You know how much money it costs to get a water truck over the Rocky Mountains? Like, good Lord, way too much.
Too much.
So then everybody complained that Kokanee tasted like crap since they stopped using the BC water. It was hilarious. I couldn't taste the difference, but you know, whatever. To each their own. Yeah. It's just another example of how innovation is driven by necessity. Now, this
necessity is the greatest driver of innovation.
And
Absolutely.
what this represents to me is, holy crap, there's a lot of necessity on the table right here.
Maybe it's kind of shown. I think maybe these tariffs, even with how awful the situation has been, all of the name calling, all of the insults, all this kind of fracturing of a very stable relationship between not only our countries, but just the world order. Maybe it's a very grim example of a way that maybe we as a country, as Canada, in several different ways, minor and major, that we've become complacent and we've become comfortable with the status quo. And that maybe it's time we kind of modernize is a bit of a cheap word, but maybe for lack of a better word, that we need to kind of modernize. We need to kind of take a next step forward. That maybe we've gotten a little too comfortable in the old ways.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, we need that spark of you know, impending doom. And I think we have it. We're perfectly following the game plan. We have a spark of impending doom from some idiot in the States, and I think we are going to respond by showing the world just how innovative we can be, just how well we can cut costs and meet our fiscal responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful too. And you know, that kind of, I'm going to kind of go down a bit of a tangent here, kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, but there are, across human history, there have been lots of periods of tough times. And I think we are in I think this decade so far has been a decade of tough times, whether you want to look at it as geopolitics, domestically. But I think domestically,
the first 4 years were a write-off. Yeah.
Well, pretty much. But if you look at domestically in Canada, there are issues, you know, especially the biggest necessities of life when it comes to affordability, the economy, lack of opportunities for young people to, you know, everything in that way. The impending doom, I think, could be, you really could look at this, again, maybe this is a complete blind optimist's way of looking at the world, but I could see this as being, if we really kickstarted our own domestic industry and we really invested in our universities to develop these new, like the universities, the colleges, the polytechnics, the ways that we can make our auto industry, to make all these water bombers, to really kind of kickstart a new era and a new time of economic growth and prosperity for the young people in this country. I mean, for as much as people like to maybe poke at Gen Z or millennials, there's a lot of very bright, smart people amongst our generation. And I feel like really investing in them by investing domestically and here in the country could really lead to a very bright future. And I think it would help kind of dampen a lot of the very kind of grim...
get on top of the brain drain. That's what it would do. Yeah, because half of the people graduate and go straight to the States, because at the job fair, graduation day, every American company is...
Or maybe the person, the Canadian who could eventually find a cure for cancer is working at Costco because they have no other choice to.
Probably is, yeah.
So I just feel like this could be seen as one of those ways that, you know, really investing in our young people, and I don't know. I feel like that could just be the impending doom could be a way to really kickstart.
Yeah. Well, the way to counteract impending doom is to have a goal.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's one thing I think a lot of politicians have lacked.
Well, kids lack goals. Then that's why they are not performing to their full standard, because they're like, it's too hard. It's too expensive. It's too something. But you have a goal there so that people can look beyond the hardships and just concentrate on the goal. Now, if the goal was to build an affordable car that any kid could buy on a part-time salary, it's a great goal, because it's hard and it's going to actually impact people's lives in a positive way. You know, going to the moon wasn't easy. that was
They
the
did
beauty.
it.
Yeah, that's the beauty
Like
of it.
at the beginning of the 60s, you know, they're like, hey, we're going to land, Kennedy said it, we're going to land a man on the moon by the end of this decade. And they did it.
With a computer that's no more powerful than a wristwatch.
Exactly.
Actually, the Apple Watch could probably fly you to the moon, no problem.
on its own.
On its own. Yeah, just press the button.
Yeah. Well, but I think this shows within human history, there are times where necessity really has driven our goals, because the whole thing about us going to the moon, the necessity there was to one up the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Even though the necessity was a little dumb, when there was necessity there and human minds came together to really forge, you know, a positive future or a goal, the results were like stunning,
Off the charts.
amazing. And still to this day, it's still heralded as one of the greatest things ever.
Yeah.
Unless you're a flat earther and you thought it was just all done in a Hollywood studio.
You mean it wasn't?
No. But I think we're touching on a really good point here, that I think that maybe a lot of these issues should really kind of maybe just, again, it's like I've said it before, just kind of smack us in the head a little bit, saying, wake up,
Yeah.
forge some goals.
You know, and the moon obviously might be a little beyond our reach, but the railroad, that wasn't.
No, like the railroad,
it was a huge goal.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Well, I think like everything that we were talking about, the railroad, the auto industry, the water bombers, all that is absolutely feasible. We could go start that tomorrow if we wanted to. We have the means and the resources,
You're
but we just
darn right we could.
but we just don't want to.
No, because unless somebody's getting some kickbacks on the side, it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
That's the way
And there are a lot of people that are afraid of change. There are a lot of people who want change, but then there are a lot of people that are damn terrified of it. And people are just comfortable with the status quo.
Well, it's funny that a saying stands. When a saying stands the test of time, it's usually because it hits us at our core, right? And when somebody said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, like when you just sit back and think about that statement and let it kind of soak in.
That is one of my favorite quotes ever.
It's amazing.
It is one of the best quotes ever.
Yeah, it just gets you.
It
on
just makes me
every
want to
level.
go like run through a wall.
Yeah.
Just with power, like
like the Kool-Aid man.
pretty much, yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I think hardship, you know, for all you hear about how bad hardship is, there are so many positive spin-offs, not by forced hardship, but by volunteering hardship.
Yep.
Like, here's a goal, who's with me? We're going to start climbing this mountain to reach this goal. Do you want to come with me? There might be some ancillary benefits because of it.
And there might be bumps along the way.
Right, and there'll definitely be bumps along the way. But anyways, when you have a crowd, a population, a country's population united in one goal, it's magical. You know, it's like a playoff party with the Winnipeg Jets. It's basically what you have.
Well, I think actually a recent example, the Four Nations.
Oh, the
face-off.
Four Nations.
Like,
What a game.
I know. I say let's take a little bit to kind of tie that into this so we can just talk about hockey.
Perfect.
But that game on Thursday, for the first couple days afterwards, like, you can really see just how united the country actually is at its core. Like,
I didn't touch the ground for an hour.
I know. I didn't either. I blew out my voice and I hurt my hand because I was just banging against the walls with happiness.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was such a great experience. And one of the other things that I really enjoyed about it, you know, we're in a new technological era, podcast being one of the new things. I watched a friend of mine I was telling you about, a YouTuber from Toronto, who talked about the game, and because he's so good at understanding the Canadian experience, he gave what had to be the best recap video of that game. I think that his recap video will probably live in infamy, just because, you know, when my kid is old enough to understand hockey, I'm going to show you what it was like back in 2025, you know, however many years ago that will have been by the time I show, you know, this is what it was like watching this game in 2025. And now, you know, when the last time we had major international tournaments and Canada had something to celebrate, there was no record of that. Unless you had a CBC on a videotape, you weren't going to watch it again. But the internet's forever. So we get to enjoy that Canada game recap. And he practically cries in it. Like he's very, moved. And it was such a great way to mark the occasion. And I have it saved in my favorites, so I can watch it whenever I want because it's such
exactly. Yeah, because obviously, it's one of our national sports, and I think that maybe is an example of a goal that kind of unites us as a country. Because we care about hockey. We have very high, we have very high standards about our competition and how we perform in the sport. So when you have this goal of, okay, we want to win the Four Nations, but of course with all recent political events, there's one country out of the four that we really, really want to beat.
Yeah.
And when
not naming names,
not naming names. But when you not only win, but then beat that country, you accomplish both of those goals. It's utter euphoria. And the whole country has been like, I've still drunk on the euphoria, and it's been nearly a week already.
I couldn't get enough of the game, and I was so happy when it. I know. I was
so happy too, and and it also just helped the fact that was one of the best hockey games in the last in last 20 years. I would be willing to say that was probably one of maybe the top 15, top 10 hockey games of all time.
Well, and we had so much in it too with Hellebuck, our star goalie.
I know,
fighting for the enemy. So
I know
already we're in a tizzy.
Already on edge, and then of course all the political tension, the anthem booing, and how much both sides just didn't want to lose to the other.
The anthems were huge,
and then of course you had all the controversies about who was and wasn't on the team. Players had to drop out because of injury. Yeah. All the flack we gave Jordan Binnington. The entire country, I think, has to now write a handwritten apology letter to Binnington.
People are
making
YouTube
millions
videos.
Of letters showing up at his door.
There's our apology videos for Binnington on YouTube.
And actually, I'll do this really quick. Jordan Binnington, I am sorry. I was critical of you in the first 3 games, but in the final, you dug deep and you had ice in your veins like the 2019 Cup final, which was also in Boston. And thank you, sir. Those 3 overtime saves you had were probably some of the most clutch back-to-back saves in the history of Team Canada sports ever.
So I don't want to repeat I echo all your words. I'm not going to repeat them, but I will add that Binnington's welcome on this podcast anytime.
Jordan, off season, we've got an extra space here at the table for you. Well,
yeah. Where do you go from there?
I don't even know if do we want to go anything there, or do you?
No, we probably don't have time for a new topic. We could carry on with Four Nations. Was there anything controversial about it?
Well, there was a lot of stuff that was controversial about it that you can probably tie back to the United States. Well, okay, this is something that I just kind of find a little funny. So before the final, Donald Trump called the American team.
That's right.
He called them in their dressing room and he gave them, his whole speech. And I have to say, I'm just paraphrasing, but I love how he gave the Donald Trump response of, he basically is kind of saying that he knows nothing about hockey. He's like, you guys are all the best players. I love hockey. I love the sport. And I love all of you and the way you play the sport. Like, he gave it was one of those answers.
Get lots of touchdowns.
Exactly. Win the World Series for America. No. But I just found it funny that he gave this whole call on the phone to the team before the game started. Trudeau, he said nothing. He kind of basically, he probably just kind of silently said, go do your thing, guys.
Sucking his thumb.
But I think Trudeau actually got the last laugh. Trudeau got the last laugh because he said, you can't have our game and you can't have our country. I think he probably had that one stashed in the vault for a few weeks, but I'll admit, I will admit I'm not the biggest Trudeau fan, but that tweet was just the perfect, amazing.
Well, and the reason I wanted to drag on Four Nations a little bit longer was to get this out, and you set it up perfectly. I think Trudeau missed a great opportunity because all NHL hockey pucks are made in Canada.
Well, there you go.
And Trudeau should have said, yeah, the price just went up. Way up. Not even a little. It went through the roof up.
Yeah.
It would have been a fun thing to say as a joke. But a missed opportunity to fight rhetoric with more rhetoric, right?
Well, yeah, that's just it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the level you want to meet Trump on is not trading real jabs, but trading virtual jabs.
Sure. Well, because that's
if we start trading real jabs, it's not going to be fun.
No. But considering that Twitter or X is kind of his territory, his domain, the fact that Trudeau kind of went on said domain and said, you can't have our game and you can't have our country.
Yeah. Well, if he would have finished it with it and the price of hockey pucks just went up. Yeah. That would have been
just absolute cinema.
Yeah. Then somebody would have went, holy crap, Trudeau, well done. Good job. But I think we did that topic.
I think that was a fun way to go.
Well,
I think how I like how it was one of those things where if you're going to talk about something negative, you then talk about something positive as a solution. I think this episode was that. We really kind of started it down in the dumps by talking about all the awful things. We offered some solutions, some optimistic ways of looking at the world, our domestic situation, and then we got to talk about hockey and flex that we're still the best at our own sport. So that's a day well spent in my books.
Can a podcast get any better than that?
No. If you're Canadian and you want to do a podcast, find at least like 5 minutes to talk about hockey.
Yeah, end every podcast with 5 minutes on hockey. Just talk about hockey. We should have a hockey podcast. I'm sure that's been done before.
Well, we can do our own. We'll talk about that. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for watching today's episode. We hope you enjoyed, you laughed along with us, or if you have any comments, any insights, anything that you'd like to add to the conversation, you can feel free to email us at wcgtv@westmancom.com. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment and tell us maybe.
We gotta get the little bell, subscribe,
subscribe, do all of the
fancy things out there.
All the fancy things. You can tell us where we went right, where we went wrong, or if you want to keep talking about hockey.
What's this we stuff?
Where
he went wrong.
Where I went wrong. But thank you very much for watching this episode, and from Kevin and Colin, we hope to see you soon.